this was the relationship, this is what went on between us. Yeah. And I had a couple of explosions, if you will.
What if I told you Hollywood's golden boy, Tony Curtis, had a life filled with more tragedy than his movies? From childhood poverty and family tragedy to shocking addictions and a scandalous affair, his story is full of twists and turns. Worse yet, his own children were left with nothing when he passed away. But why? Did he really rewrite his will on purpose, or was there something darker at play? Stick around if you're ready to see the real Tony Curtis, a story way more dramatic than any movie he ever made. Tony Curtis had a cursed childhood, the kind that would make you think, how could anyone make it through all that? His story starts in New York City, where he was born in 1925. His parents were from Hungary and had moved to America trying to make a better life. His dad worked long hours as a tailor, but money was always tight. Things were so hard that Curtis's parents couldn't even afford to feed him and his brothers sometimes. They ended up having to put the kids into an orphanage for a while, which must have been heartbreaking. Sadly, it wasn't long after this another tragedy struck the family. Curtis's younger brother, Julius, was only 12 years old when he was hit by a truck and killed. It's hard to imagine how terrible that must have been for young Tony to lose his brother like that. Even after this, things weren't getting any easier for little Tony. On top of the money problems and losing his brother, there was another dark cloud hanging over the family mental illness. Tony's mom had a condition called schizophrenia, which can make people see and hear things that aren't real. This made things at home really unpredictable, sometimes even scary. Sadly, it wasn't just his mom. Tony's other brother, Robert, also ended up getting this same illness and had to be put in the hospital. Despite all this hardship, there was one bright spot for Tony. His mom, even though she was struggling with her own problems, loved taking him to the movies. They'd go see double features, 2 movies for the price of 1. Sitting in that dark theater, watching stories come alive on the screen, something special sparked inside Tony. Then life decided to throw another curveball at Tony. He got slammed with a sickness called rheumatic fever, which forced him to stay in bed for a super long time. Stuck there, unable to run around like a normal kid, Tony needed something to keep his mind busy. That's when he found a new passion: drawing and painting. He dove headfirst into this world of colors and shapes, pouring his creativity onto canvases. And as his health slowly got better, so did his art. His paintings started reflecting all the emotions he'd been bottling up, the sadness, the confusion, but also a unique way of seeing the world. Now, as things started getting better for him, he got a little lost along the way. He'd skipped school and ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd, even getting into little bits of trouble. But thankfully, there was one person in his neighborhood who saw through all that. This neighbor saw a spark of something more in Tony and decided to step in. He sent him to a Boy Scout camp, a place where all that rough energy could be put to better use. This was a big turning point for him, a chance to cool down and see there was a different path out there. Back in school at Seward Park High, things started looking up. One day at 16 years old, he landed a small part in a school play. The moment Tony stepped onto that stage, the lights hitting his face, something inside him clicked. It was like finding a missing puzzle piece, and Tony knew right then acting was for him. Hollywood stars like Cary Grant were his heroes, and after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Tony wanted to be brave like them. Right after Pearl Harbor was attacked, Tony decided to follow in their footsteps and signed up to serve in the U.S. Navy. He ended up on a submarine in the Pacific, which means he got to see some serious action. One of the biggest moments of his life was watching the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay from his ship, the USS Proteus. That must have been an incredible sight. After the war was over, Tony was ready to chase his real dream, acting. In 1949, he took a leap of faith and headed for Hollywood. It wasn't all sunshine and red carpets, though. Starting out was tough, but Tony wasn't one to give up easily. Then came a lucky break, a chance meeting with Jack Warner, a big shot at Universal Studios. Warner saw potential in Tony and signed him, but there was one condition. He needed a new name. Bernard Schwartz wouldn't cut it in Hollywood. So Tony Curtis was born, a name that would soon become synonymous with movie stardom. Now, with a new name and a contract at Universal, Tony Curtis was ready for his shot. His Hollywood journey started small, a blink-and-you'll-miss-it part in a 1949 crime film called Criss Cross. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Then he kept landing bigger roles, and in 1951, he got a big break. The Prince Who Was a Thief was a classic swashbuckling adventure set in the Middle East, starring Tony as a daring but charming hero. Think flying carpets and epic sword fights. Tony was right in the middle of it all. This role was the one that launched Tony Curtis to stardom. Critics loved him. Audiences fell in love with him. He completely owned the character, disappearing into the role and taking everyone watching on a wild ride. The Prince Who Was a Thief made Tony a genuine movie star, and the movie offers started pouring in. He didn't slow down for a second. First up was Flesh and Fury, a boxing movie perfect for showing off his athletic side. Then a complete change of pace with No Room for the Groom, a comedy where he proved he could make audiences laugh just as easily as swoon. And back to the Middle East for Son of Ali Baba, again with Piper Laurie, his co-star from The Prince Who Was a Thief. Tony even got to star alongside his wife, Janet Leigh, in the movie Houdini, playing the legendary magician. All those magic tricks must have been a whole new challenge. But then, Tony was always up for a challenge. He wasn't getting stuck playing the same type of character. Movie after movie kept coming, keeping Tony busy and audiences on the edge of their seats wondering what he'd become next. After all that wild success, Tony Curtis was ready for the next level. He landed a big role in Trapeze alongside Hollywood legends like Burt Lancaster. It turned out to be a runaway hit and proved Tony wasn't just a pretty face anymore. While riding this wave of success, he and his wife Janet Leigh created their own film company called Kirtley Productions. Now they were calling the shots. This led to parts in more movies, a western called The Rawhide Years, a thriller called The Midnight Story, and even a role as a gambler in Mr. Corey. But the most exciting thing came when Burt Lancaster, that big star from Trapeze, came calling again. He wanted Tony to play a really different kind of role in Sweet Smell of Success. The movie didn't make a ton of money, but for the first time ever, the critics went crazy over Tony's acting. Now Tony was hitting his stride, landing major roles left and right. Think huge historical epic with Vikings, battles, and ships. Yep, that was The Vikings with Kirk Douglas. It was a box office smash. Then came Kings Go Forth, a war movie where he starred next to Frank Sinatra and Natalie Wood. But the next movie? Wow. The Defiant Ones was a serious drama where Tony played a prisoner on the run, chained to a black man played by Sidney Poitier. The movie tackled racism head-on, a brave thing to do back then. Tony's performance even earned him an Oscar nomination, showing just how far he'd come from those early roles. But it wasn't all serious acting from there. He teamed up with Janet Leigh again for a comedy called The Perfect Furlough, and then came one of his biggest hits, Some Like It Hot, with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon. Think hilarious disguises and high-speed chases. He followed that up with another comedy, Operation Petticoat, this time with the legendary Cary Grant. Tony wasn't content to just act in movies. He wanted to be more involved. So he started his own production companies, which gave him control over the kinds of projects he worked on. One of the coolest things he did was film a whole movie at Disneyland. He also loved guest starring in big movies, popping up with famous actors all the time. But most importantly, the 1960s were all about comedy for Tony. Movie after movie, he was making audiences laugh with his hilarious characters. He even lent his voice to the Flintstones cartoon, playing a caveman version of himself. This shows he always had a sense of humor and didn't take himself too seriously. Beyond the camera, Tony Curtis was more than just a movie star. He was a true Renaissance man with talents far beyond the silver screen. When the cameras stopped rolling, he transformed into a painter, unleashing a passion for colors and shapes, just like he had as a kid stuck in bed with that bad fever. He found inspiration in the works of the greats, Van Gogh, Picasso, all the heavy hitters. Tony's paintings weren't just ordinary, though. They were a splash of dreams and imagination, with a touch of that same charm he had on screen. Imagine swirling colors, impossible shapes, all coming together to tell a story only Tony could tell. It wasn't long before his artwork started getting serious attention. Fancy galleries in New York and California proudly showed off his creations like the Red Table. Tony's generosity extended beyond the art world. He reconnected with his Hungarian Jewish heritage, a journey he shared with his daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis. They joined forces to fund the 1998 rebuilding of the Grand Synagogue in Budapest. The Emmanuel Foundation for Hungarian Culture, founded by Tony himself, took on the mission of restoring synagogues and cemeteries throughout Hungary, ensuring their history wouldn't be forgotten. Always the storyteller, Tony didn't shy away from sharing his experiences. In 2008, his autobiography, American Prince, a Memoir, gave fans a window into his life. From his tough beginnings in the Bronx to rubbing shoulders with Hollywood royalty, the book offered an honest and captivating glimpse into his incredible journey. He followed this up with The Making of Some Like It Hot, a 2009 book filled with behind-the-scenes anecdotes from one of his most beloved films, sharing personal memories of working with Marilyn Monroe and the magic that went into creating a cinematic masterpiece. Tony Curtis, the movie star, the artist, the philanthropist, the author, a true Renaissance man who left his mark on the world in fascinating ways. Okay, now here's where Tony Curtis's life gets a little bit like a soap opera. Behind all the Hollywood glamour, his love life was quite dramatic. He was married 6 times. His first wife was the famous actress Janet Leigh. They got hitched in 1951 and had 2 daughters, Kelly and Jamie Lee, who both followed in their parents' footsteps and became actresses too. But even with this picture-perfect family, their marriage was rocky. Tony later admitted that he didn't love Janet enough. Imagine, you're at the top of your game as a movie star. The studio doesn't want you to get married. They thought it would ruin your image. But guess what? Tony and Janet said forget that, and secretly ran off to get married anyway, with comedian Jerry Lewis as a witness. Rebellious and romantic. Sadly, their relationship wasn't meant to last in the long run. After ending things with Janet Leigh, he didn't waste much time before marrying Christine Kaufman, his co-star from Taras Bulba. They had 2 more daughters, Alexandra and Allegra, but sadly, this marriage also ended in divorce in 1968. In 1968, he married again, this time to Leslie Allen. Together, they had 2 sons, Nicholas and Benjamin, but unfortunately, this marriage wouldn't last either, and they divorced in 1982. Tony's search for love led to more marriages, to Andrea Savio in 1984, which ended in divorce in 1992, and briefly to Lisa Deutsch a year later. It wasn't all sunshine and happily ever afters for Tony. He had some run-ins with trouble too. Back in 1970, he was arrested at London's Heathrow Airport for having marijuana, and this is whole another story which we're going to discuss in few minutes. After all the ups and downs of his love life, Tony finally found some stability. He married Jill Vandenberg in 1998. They had a pretty big age difference, but that didn't seem to bother Tony. In fact, he always gushed about how amazing she was. They stayed married until the day he died. Life wasn't all easy for Tony, though. Like a lot of stars back then, he struggled with alcohol and drug abuse. He got so bad he ended up having to go to rehab in the 1980s. Luckily, it really made a difference and saved himself. But he couldn't save his young son. In 1994, his son Nicholas, just 23 years old, died of a heroin overdose. Losing a child is an unimaginable tragedy, a wound no parent should ever have to bear. Tony rarely spoke publicly about the pain, but when he did, his words spoke volumes. You never get over that, the death of a child. Osing Nicholas was a constant reminder of the fragility of life, a grief that never truly faded. He carried that pain with him always, reminding us that even Hollywood's brightest stars sometimes face the darkest struggles. Initial reports attributed Nicholas's death to a seizure. However, a heartbreaking truth unfolded months later. In March 1995, authorities arrested 2 individuals, Joshua Lean and John DeNaro, on manslaughter charges related to Nicholas's death. The investigation revealed a grim reality. Lean and DeNaro allegedly supplied the heroin that led to his passing. Massachusetts State Police Lieutenant James Cummings revealed a crucial piece of evidence, an empty heroin packet labeled "Ready to Die" found at the scene. This packet was traced back to Lean and DeNaro, solidifying their connection to the tragedy. The investigation also identified a 3rd individual sought in connection with the charges. The legal proceedings brought a sense of accountability, but couldn't erase the pain. While details of the 3rd individual remain unclear, the court ultimately sentenced those involved with varying degrees of punishment. One individual, possibly an associate of Lean and DeNaro, received a sentence of 2 years in prison and 4 years of probation. Lean, Nicholas's best friend, and DeNaro faced lighter sentences, 3 months in jail and 5 years of probation each. The disparity in sentencing may have sparked discussions about justice and the complexities of drug-related deaths. Yet the true consequence of Nicholas's death transcended legal proceedings. For Tony Curtis and his family, this tragedy cast a long shadow. Tony Curtis had his own demons too. As his movie career started slowing down, something far more dangerous was taking control. During the filming of Lepke in 1974, he became addicted to cocaine. This addiction worsened over the years, spiraling into a dark and destructive habit. Things got so bad that in 1984, he landed in the hospital with advanced cirrhosis, a terrible disease caused by alcohol and drug abuse. This was Tony's rock bottom, the moment he realized he had to change. Thankfully, he had the courage to fight back. He checked himself into the Betty Ford Clinic, seeking help and starting on the long road to recovery. But health problems kept coming. In 1994, Tony suffered a heart attack and needed emergency heart bypass surgery. Then, in 2006, a bad case of pneumonia landed him in the hospital again, this time slipping into a coma for over a month. He pulled through yet again, but was left weakened and confined to a wheelchair. His health struggles were a constant companion throughout his life. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and asthma made breathing difficult, a condition likely worsened by his past smoking habit. In 2010, while attending a book signing in Nevada, an asthma attack landed him in the hospital. Just a few months later, on September 29, 2010, Tony Curtis passed away at his Nevada home.
But I think we're going to remember him most for being one of the most enduring Hollywood icons of our time and of times gone by, and someone who really reveled in his fame. And something that I just wanted to tell you, not so long ago,
the cause of death was cardiac arrest, but it stemmed from the long-term lung problems he'd bravely fought. His wife, Jill, revealed that despite quitting smoking nearly 30 years earlier, the damage had already been done. Tony Curtis's legacy extended far beyond the silver screen. He left behind a loving family, including 5 children and 7 grandchildren. His daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, a successful actress herself, spoke about her father's enduring impact, highlighting his incredible performances in both film and art. A testament to the life he lived, Tony's memorial service was a star-studded event. Family, friends, and notable figures from the entertainment industry all came together to celebrate him. His daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, was there, alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rich Little, and Vera Goulet, widow of the singer Robert Goulet. Honorary pallbearers at the service included Hollywood legends Kirk Douglas and Kirk Kerkorian, a true sign of the respect Tony commanded throughout his career. On October 4, 2010, Tony Curtis was laid to rest at Palm Memorial Park Cemetery in Henderson, Nevada. Though his life had its share of struggles, his journey as a movie star, artist, and philanthropist left an indelible mark on the world. Tony Curtis may never have won that coveted Oscar, something he openly admitted was disappointing. However, his incredible talent and influence were undeniable. In March 2006, he received the Sony Ericsson Empire Lifetime Achievement Award, honoring his illustrious career. Curtis was also awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1960, commemorating his significant impact on the entertainment industry. Furthermore, he received the Œuvre des Arts et Deer from France in 1995, further underscoring his global recognition and influence. His impact on both the silver screen and the art world continues to be celebrated and appreciated by fans and admirers worldwide, but few incidents after his death completely changed the image of Tony. Long before Some Like It Hot made Tony Curtis and Marilyn Monroe the funniest on-screen duo in history, they were anything but just co-stars. They had a passionate past beach barbecues, romantic moments, the kind of stuff they make classic movies about. But there's always that other side of the coin, and Tony finally revealed a long-held secret in his 2009 book. He and Marilyn had a full-blown affair while filming the movie. Now, this wasn't any ordinary affair. Both Tony and Marilyn were married to other people. This was full-on scandalous, secret Hollywood drama. The real trouble started when Marilyn confessed the whole thing to her husband, Arthur Miller. But the truly devastating part came next. Marilyn told Tony she'd gotten pregnant and sadly ended up having a miscarriage. Losing that baby was a terrible heartbreak for her, especially as it wasn't the first or last pregnancy that ended in tragedy. The whole relationship with Marilyn was a whirlwind for Tony, exciting, passionate, but shrouded in sadness. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, making audiences laugh and fall in love. Yet the real story behind the scenes was far more complex, filled with forbidden love, heartbreak, and the messy reality behind the glamorous personas of 2 of Hollywood's biggest stars. And if that wasn't enough, another news shocked the people to their core. A dark truth emerged in recent years when the legendary actress Kim Novak, his co-star in the movie The Mirror Cracked, came forward with a shocking accusation. She claimed that during a party at Tony's Beverly Hills home in 1958, he'd spiked her drink, leaving her disoriented and vulnerable. Novak recalls Tony bringing her a drink, but after that she blacked out. When she woke, she found herself naked and confused, with no memory of what happened. To her, it felt like a violation, as if someone had taken advantage of her while she was unconscious. This accusation stands as one of the oldest related to the #MeToo movement, a stark reminder that sexual misconduct was a problem in Hollywood even in its so-called golden age. It wasn't just powerful producers lurking in the shadows. Even a seemingly charming movie star could be hiding a dark secret. But what he did with his child is even more bizarre. After Tony Curtis passed away, his widow Jill made the difficult decision to auction off his personal belongings. On September 17, 2011, Julian's auction house in Beverly Hills hosted a fascinating, if not slightly bittersweet, event. Hundreds of items that had once belonged to the legendary actor were up for grabs, promising a peek into the life of a Hollywood star. From costumes and awards to paintings and personal items, it was like walking through a museum exhibit dedicated to Tony Curtis. The online auction buzzed with excitement, drawing bids from all over the world. Tony's fans weren't about to miss a chance to own a piece of his legacy, and those bids added up. By the end, the auction had raked in over $1 million. This money went to help support Jill and the charitable causes she and Tony supported, particularly their beloved Shiloh Horse Rescue. But amidst the excitement, a bitter truth came to light. Tony's 5 children, including the renowned actress Jamie Lee Curtis, wouldn't receive a penny. Just months before his death, Tony had revised his will and trust, specifically excluding all his children. His will, in a cruel twist, explicitly listed their names, Jamie Lee, Allegra, and their siblings, but offered no explanation for their disinheritance. This news came as a devastating blow to the family, leaving them shocked and deeply hurt. The auction, meant to celebrate Tony's life, only intensified their grief. As Allegra Curtis, Tony's daughter, revealed in an interview, the widow, Jill Vandenberg Curtis, was the sole beneficiary. What added salt to the wound was Jill's decision to organize the auction without informing Tony's children. The auction itself became a battleground in the larger conflict between Tony's widow and his children. While fans and collectors clamored for a piece of Tony's legacy, his family was left grappling with a deep sense of betrayal. Tony's daughter, Allegra, couldn't reconcile the auction with the image of her father she held dear. She believed he wouldn't have wanted his personal belongings scattered to the wind. It felt disrespectful, a way of reducing a complex man to a collection of objects. The auction house, however, maintained they were simply carrying out Tony's wishes. Darren Julian, the auctioneer, claimed Tony himself had visited and approved the auction. This directly contradicted Allegra's claims, creating a confusing and heartbreaking situation. Interviews with Allegra revealed the family's shock and hurt. Being excluded from the will was bad enough, but having their father's personal items sold off without a chance to hold on to a piece of their history felt like a cruel twist of the knife. Allegra suspected Jill had somehow manipulated Tony into changing his will, a suspicion that only deepened the family's pain. The situation escalated further when Tony's daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, took legal action. She filed a lawsuit against the trust, alleging that Jill or someone else had pressured Tony into changing his beneficiaries. The lawsuit painted a picture of a vulnerable Tony, susceptible to undue influence. Jill, on the other hand, vehemently denied these claims. She insisted Tony had been of sound mind when he made his decisions, and had even informed his children of his intentions beforehand. The accusations, she said, were a personal matter between Tony and his children, one in which she played no part. The legal battle remains unresolved, hanging like a dark cloud over Tony Curtis's legacy. The man who brought laughter to millions left behind a family fractured by grief and a bitter dispute over his estate. It's a sad reminder that even the most dazzling Hollywood stories can have messy, unresolved endings.